Once upon a time, I was scrolling through the chat and somebody had asked me during a live stream, Brian, who are the authors you've read the most of? And I thought about it. And it occurred to me, not only have I read a lot of these authors, I've devoured their works. I'm serious. I devoured them. I mean, not really, but you know what I mean. It's a top 10 list. Hey, welcome back to BellTube. I'm Brian Bell. It's interesting when I take a look at all the different authors I've read in the fantasy genre that certain ones come to mind more so than others. Yet when I went to go make this video and I wrote down all the authors that I've read multiple books from, and we're going to get into that here in a second, I was blown away because some of them I didn't realize how many that I have read. So I thought, let's do a top 10 list of the authors in the fantasy genre that I've read the most of, that I've devoured their works. So let's start off with number 10, and that is going to be Robert Jordan, author of The Wheel of Time. I have read 11 of his books. I'm not counting the last 3 books of The Wheel of Time. Yes, of course, he's the base for the books, but he didn't technically write them. So I have read 11 books of Robert Jordan. The guy who finished off his series, we're going to hear from in a little bit. Coming in at number 9 is the author of the urban fantasy series, Alex Verus. This is Benedict Jacka. And this is one of the ones that, as I'd mentioned earlier, when I went to write down all these books, I was blown away that I've already read 12 Benedict Jacka books. That seems like a lot, and yeah, I know they're shorter, and comparing 12 Jacka books to 12 Jordan books is an entirely different thing altogether. And I will also say that this list is a little bit challenging to do because it's not always available how many words per book everybody has, and certainly the page counts vary from edition to edition. So for this list, I just decided to do, if they wrote a book, regardless of how long it is, so long as it's not, really a novella, then I'm going to count it. So Benedict Jacka coming in at a strong number 9. I've read a dozen of his books. I've heard that Benedict Jacka's new series is more of a young adult series, but that's okay. We're going to get to an author that I've read quite a bit of in the young adult category here shortly. Coming in at a tie between number 7 and number 8 with 14 books each, we have the great Kevin Hearn and the great Richard Kadrey, both two of my favorite urban fantasy authors. Of course, Kevin Hearn's, most of his books I've read have come from the Iron Druid series, and of course, Richard Kadrey, one of my favorite series, Sandman Slim. Those guys have each landed 14 books on this list. That's a lot of books. The cool thing, and one of the things that I like the most about Richard Kadrey's books, particularly the Sandman Slim series, is they don't have any chapters. There's natural points in the story and kind of how he's laid the paragraphs off where you can kind of take a break, but there are no formal chapters. And I guess that is something that other authors have also done, but it's really been my first and only experience with that kind of a manner. Richard Kadrey, Kevin Hearn tied for 7th and 8th place with a 14-book total. Coming in at number 6, we were talking about young adult a little while ago, the author of the Percy Jackson universe. I've read so many of his books. I've read 15 of them. That's Rick Riordan. This guy has it down. He's got really kind of a formula to how he does his books, but it works for me. And I understand that it might seem a little formulaic to other people, but for me, they've been fun getaway kind of books. I haven't read them in some years, to be honest. I love the Percy Jackson universe. I think it was Magnus Chase that maybe he was doing his Norse gods thing, and I read the books that were more focused on the Egyptian gods. I just like them. They're fun. They're real light reads. If you haven't ever picked up a Rick Riordan book, I'd be surprised. Percy Jackson's a lot of fun when it comes to a series. I've not seen the new Disney Plus special. I know the old movie's kind of trash. I saw it. It wasn't great. But the books themselves are cool, and I think you could do either audio or you could do physical reading book. Rick Riordan coming in at 15 books. I have found his work to be a ton of fun. And speaking of finding a ton of fun, if you'd like to help other people find our channel, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and hit that post notification bell so you never miss a video. I've also started a new Patreon. The link will be in the description. mentioned. You don't need to do it if you don't want to, but it's there if you'd like to check it out. The more we can help people find the channel, I think the more fun we're going to have as a community. Thank you. All right, coming in at number 5, she's been referred to as the Queen of Fantasy. And by the way, I haven't read Janny Wirtz's books yet, so that title may be in dispute as I get further into it. But so far, coming in at number 5, for me so far, the Queen of Fantasy, Robin Hobb, 16 books. That's every Realm of the Elderlings book. If you'd like to see where Realm of the Elderlings falls in my top 10 fantasy series of all time, and I assure you it is in that top 10, I'll put a link at the end of this video, a card that you can click and watch that video. But wow, Realm of the Elderlings to me was just a game changer of a series. Yeah, it bops back and forth between Fitz and some other books, and yeah, the live ship is really its own trilogy, kind of built in within the world that doesn't converge until much later on. But the quality of the story and the prose, the richness and the depth of the characters that Robin Hobb builds in this world really drew me in. They're not short books, they're quite heavy, they're long, and they're not fully action-packed that you might suspect to wind up on a list of the most read authors. But I loved all 16 books in this series, including the Rainwild Chronicles, which I know is kind of trashed on a little bit, but I think that there's a method to her madness in including those 4 books in the series. I'd heard in the past that the Rainwild Chronicles was really supposed to be a trilogy, but maybe the publisher cut up books 1 and 2 to make it, 4 books in that series. I'm not real sure. It was not my favorite part of Realm of the Elderlings, but it still all counts. Robin Hobb coming in at number 5 with 16 books read. Now, this is an author that I forgot how many books I've read until I made this list. Coming in at number 4 with a total books of 17. That's a lot of books from one author, right? 17 books. We have Raymond E. Feist. Now, he was just interviewed on my friend Matt's channel, The Beard of Darkness, not that long ago. You might want to go check that out. It's really cool. But I could not believe that, yes, in fact, I have read 17 Raymond E. Feist books. This is the Magician series. This is the Rift War saga. It's been some time since I've read them. I want to say I read these in like maybe the 90s or maybe the early 2000s. It's had to have been 20 years since I've read them. I don't remember a ton of them. I bet if I went back and reread it, it would come back to me pretty quick. But 17 books is a lot of books, and this was one in particular I did not expect to find on a top 10 list of authors that I've read the most works from. Number 4, the great Raymond E. Feist. Coming in at number 3 is an author that has taken some criticism over the years, and probably pretty valid. I haven't read him since the early 80s, but if you're around about my age, you would go to a bookstore and the fantasy section was absolutely dominated by an author named Piers Anthony. Now, Piers Anthony wrote the Xanth series. A Spell for Chameleon was really his first book in that series. It was one of the first fantasy books I've ever read. As a matter of fact, it might be the first fantasy book I ever read. It's either that or The Hobbit or something along those lines. But Piers Anthony dominated the bookshelves, and I have read 18 of his books. He's kind of been a little looked down on over the last years because I think as you reinvestigate his work, and as I'd mentioned a moment ago, to reread it, there's some misogynistic sort of language in there that doesn't really hold up in today's world. But in the time, and given the fact that it was the early 80s, he was writing for the audience that he had. I loved those books. If it were not for Piers Anthony, this channel would not exist. I would have never fallen in love with the genre as much as I did. As a matter of fact, when I was doing this research to make this video, I ran into an interesting statement from the great Stephen King that he talked about his daughter in the very late 70s, or maybe it was in the early 80s, told him that she preferred Piers Anthony's work over his because she didn't want to read about squishy and crawly and creepy and dark things. So because of her request that he would write a fantasy book in the style of Piers Anthony, that's how we got this book, The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. entirely based because his daughter asked him to write a Piers Anthony kind of fantasy tale. I thought that was a really cool thing. I wanted to share it with you guys today. Coming in at number 3, Piers Anthony, 18 books. All right, you knew this guy was going to be on the list somewhere. Coming in at number 2 with 19 books read, of course, we're talking about Brandon Sanderson. Now, I've read lots of the Cosmere. Although I have not read any of the secret projects, I still have read 19 books. We're talking all the Stormlight archives that are out. All of the Mistborn books, both Era 1 and Era 2, I've read them all. I've read Warbreaker. I've read a number of his Reckoners books. There's a lot there to love. Brandon Sanderson, for me, is a comfort read. I know going into it, I'm not going to be intellectually challenged as much as I would be reading Gene Wolfe, or I'm not going to be quite as gritty as a Joe Abercrombie or a John Gwynne. But I have to say, for 19 books, Brandon Sanderson has done his job. He's told me a great story that I've really enjoyed. I found truths in. I found things about myself in a lot of his works that I haven't found anywhere else. There's a reason why Brandon Sanderson is by far doing more as an author slash influencer in the book world than pretty much anybody else right now. And he's probably in the height of his powers. He's at an age where he's probably got a long way to go, knock on wood, that we're going to see a lot more work from him. I think he just dropped another secret book yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. The man is a machine. It is no doubt that he would end up on the list, and coming in at 19 books, he's a firm number 2. All right, we've reached the top of the list. Who would be at number 1? Again, this one surprised me. I knew he would be somewhere on the list, but I didn't know where. I certainly did not expect Jim Butcher to be the number 1 author I have read more than any other author at 23 books. That's all of the Dresden Files. That's the Codex Alera. That's the Cinder Spires. 23 books. I haven't even read the most recent Cinder Spires, and he still tops this list. To me, that is an incredible author to keep my attention for close to 24 books. I love the Dresden Files. If you've seen my best urban fantasy lists, or if you've seen any of my videos on urban fantasy, you know how much I love Harry Dresden and the universe that's built around him. But it is a bit of a surprise seeing Jim Butcher sitting atop this list. Now, if you go to a retail Barnes & Noble store, maybe it's not that big of a surprise because the guy's all over the place and they carry all of his series, so he's a more obvious choice. But really, this is an author that I read day one. And I think that's going to be another video, by the way, my kind of day one must-read authors. Jim Butcher, for me, is that and more. He's the number 1 author that I've devoured the most from, and that is going to bring us to today's one for the road, which is going to be about don't be afraid to enjoy what you love. A lot of the time on the channel here, I talk about exploring new things, and I think that that's great for growing as a human being. You don't know what you like until you try new things. But there is something to be said about fully exploring something once you know you already like it. These authors, even coming in at number 10, this Robert Jordan at 11 books, that's a lot of books. Don't be afraid to get in deep with the stuff that you love. There's always something new, even if you think that there isn't. It seems like there's so many folks out there that have just never really found what they love. And I'm not necessarily talking about career. It could be hobbies. It could really be anything. But when you find something that just clicks for you and works for you, don't be afraid to explore it fully. Now, I'm interested to know, which authors have you read the most of? Is your list similar to mine? I suspect a lot of you Sanderson fans are gonna have comments for me, but leave it in the comments who you've read more than anybody else. Because if they're not on my list and you're part of the BellTube community, if you're a subscriber here, I wanna know what authors interest you the most. I wanna know what has captivated you to a point that it's not just 1 book, it's not just 3 books, it's not just 5 books, you're reading 10 or more of that author. All I can say today is spread some positivity. I'm going to leave a card right here if you want to check out my top 10 fantasy series of all time. And until then, here's your fortune.